Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
Good morning, Darwin.
Good morning to you, ANITA.
Good morning, good morning. How's it in Staten Island? Is it weather nice there?
No.
No?
It is the coldest June. One June I remember snow, but
You're kidding. It's
cold
cold?
winds of Canada have been blowing down on us, so we're having a delayed summer. And
What happens to all the flowers that have popped up? Are they going to be ruined?
No. Oh, it's not freezing.
Oh, okay.
No.
Okay. It's just cold.
Let me put it this way. It's, you know how on an October day you get by with a sweater. Well, of course, you live in Florida.
Yes.
Which is great weather.
I love it here. Darwin, I love it here in Florida.
Yeah, well, thank God you don't live in California.
Oh, I know. It's really hard. If I was thinking about that, actually, all the movie stars and all the people, they may be very rich, but they can't control the water, can they?
Well, some of them are rich. I'll tell you. On my last visit to California, I've never seen so many famous people out of work.
But did they save their money?
You know,
Darwin, did they save their money so that they're not worried?
No, so many don't. And in fact, actually, that sort of leads into something I want to talk about today, which is Hollywood biographies or Hollywood autobiographies. I'll lead off with the avalanche that's been occurring. I'm ready to. My Peter O'Toole book is now being shipped out. Hellraiser, Sexual Outlaw, Irish Rebel. Now, what's interesting today about it's received enormous play. I mean, it's not even shipped to Britain yet, but the Daily Mail, which is, the largest circulation paper in the world, did 2 pages on it with 7 pictures. And now I used to review books for the Miami Herald when I was a young man. What happened in those days, a book would come out and people would review it. But today, the avalanche happens even before anyone's read the book. And for example, once the Daily Mail came out with a story, people started weighing in on comments about the book, which they have not read, and the Daily Mail finally had to shut down its website. But what was interesting is how the major attack that always comes is, well, Peter O'Toole is not alive to defend himself. Now, then another person says, what is there to defend? He went to bed with Elizabeth Taylor, Ava Gardner, and Audrey Hepburn. What kind of... He needs to defend himself if he didn't turn down an invitation to go to bed with those world-class women. And I find it amazing that argument always arises. And is it so shocking that a handsome movie star went to bed with some beautiful women? I mean, just ask Warren Beatty. I can't believe that someone needs to defend themselves. I mean, you need to defend yourself if you're a child molester or murdered someone, but romantic movie stars go to bed with each other. I mean, let's get CNN on the phone.
You're so right. You're so right, Darwin. And, of course, what we're seeing today in society, I mean, it makes all that seem so stupid. I mean, I have to even tell you something else that I was thinking about. And this isn't, it's not that it's political. It's just seeing human nature. When you think about that Clinton was tried, I don't guess they did impeach him, but that was the worst thing that could happen. And now you see the former Speaker of the House and what he's been doing. So, what
I know.
I mean, it is amazing, isn't it?
That is a real shocker. That took almost everybody, although I had heard whispers of that long ago. But, people spread rumors about everybody. So the one thing, though, that I wanted to talk about is this idea that a celebrity should be alive. The New York Times did a very interesting article that no biography can be honest as long as the person is alive. And the most unreliable biographies of all time are the so-called autobiographies. And I'll give you an example. Marlene Dietrich wrote Marlene. She called it Marlene. We know who that is. And Bennett Cerf of Random House, you probably used to remember him from the TV, I've Got a Secret.
Yes.
And he published her manuscript, but after he read it, he wrote her a note and said, Marlene, we wanted a biography of your autobiography of yourself, and not a biography of Mother Teresa.
Right.
No, I mean, Marlene was the femme fatale of the 20th century, and she submits not only denying most of her really great romantic attachments, but she made the astounding statement that she never made movies in the Weimar Republic days of the 1920s. And she said her first movie was My Blue Angel, directed by Joseph von Sternberg. Well, Bennett Cerf had to put in the back of her book, Miss Dietrich was mistaken, and then he listed all the German films that she had been in before The Blue Angel. And nothing could be more saccharine than the great Joan Crawford's autobiography, Portrait of Joan. One of the most interesting things in that book was she said, contrary to all the rumors, I never made pornographic movies in the 1920s. Well, she did, and not only did she, but in fact, I remember going to a theater off Times Square, and of all people, Mickey Rooney, he said it was the low point of his career. He was the narrator for a movie called Hollywood Blue, and part of this movie, the major part, consisted of showing the pornographic films that Joan Crawford made. Now, you don't disguise her face. She is very clearly, it was one of the great faces of the 20th century, and there she is in performing pornography. But these things don't get in books. The only woman that was even halfway honest, I'm talking movie stars. The other people in other professions have written much more honest autobiographies. The only glamour queen that I ever knew who wrote a sort of honest biography was Miss Hedy Lamarr, who was called the most beautiful woman in the world. I got to know her because we had the same agent. And she wrote a scandalous book called Ecstasy and Me, My Life as a Woman. Now, this is the only autobiography of an actress I ever read where on page 1, she starts writing about her affairs with both men and women. Most major movies, I don't know of another example of that. The only thing that she did in the book that was not dishonest, but she didn't name the famous people that she seduced. I mean, I could figure out who they were, and but at least it was an attempt at being an honest biography.
Was she a very good actress? I mean, I know who.
No, she was a very beautiful actress, and as she told me one time, she said, when you are as beautiful as I am, she was not modest. She said, when you are as beautiful as I am, you don't really need to act.
That's interesting.
Well, I mean, a gorgeous woman. You know, she ultimately ended up living in your beloved Florida, and my beloved Florida, too, since I used to live there.
Where?
But in Florida, you know.
I know, Miami?
Yeah, well, you know, I arrived in Miami in 1949.
I know that, but where did she live?
I forgot the town. Oh, near Orlando.
Ah,
Yeah, she had an apartment there. And I could go on and on about her, but I want to tell you my own experiences in ghostwriting star biographies. Actually, that's how I got my start in biography, and it wasn't a good start. When I arrived in Miami, my mother was working on a movie called Slattery's Hurricane with Richard Widmark, and my mother was widowed, and she was having an affair with Richard Widmark. And the two actresses I met in the movie, which was about hurricanes in South Florida, were Linda Darnell, beautiful woman, and Veronica Lake. Now, years later, Veronica Lake was the famous World War II pinup, famous for the peekaboo bangs over where she wore her hair. I'm sure you remember her, that came down over one eye. And Franklin Roosevelt wrote her and asked her to cut her bangs because too many women working in munitions plants were getting their strands of hair caught in the war machinery manufacturing.
That's funny.
So she cut her hair, and like Samson in the Bible, she never regained her World War II fame. And I first met her in Miami, and I couldn't believe it. She was tending bar in a Miami bar, and at first, I'd known her, I'd met her, but she didn't look like Veronica Lake. She had lost all of her money. She had closely cropped hair and wearing horn-rimmed glasses. And I think I was the only one that recognized her as Veronica Lake. And then one thing, I started seeing her, and this was my first attempt at biography. I've written now 35, and I said, I want to write your life story. And we started talking, and then she started, she went ahead with it, but she said she wanted to see me, the whole manuscript, which I would submit to her, and she had the right to turn it down. So I got her whole story and rushed up to Saranac Lake, which is a charming little resort in the Adirondacks. And in 6 weeks, I banged out her life story. What was interesting about it, not only she had a notorious life, but as a young girl, she had been diagnosed as a classic schizophrenic, and her mother never got treatment for her. And I thought it could be a story of how she became a movie star. Of course, she behaved irrationally. She got involved in all sorts of trouble. She threw fits. She had affairs with very famous people like Howard Hughes, Darrell F. Zanuck. She staged orgies at her house. It was a fabulous story of how she, and I thought it would help even people understand schizophrenia, which is better treated today, as you of all people know, because of your expert in all sorts of problems. And then I flew to Miami and gave it to her, and she read it and threw it in my face.
Oh, no.
And she said, if this is published, there'll be a rash of divorces in Hollywood, and many people will have strokes. And I also don't, you make me out to be a crazy. And I said, well, you did have a problem, Veronica. And she said, I will not do it. And so she didn't.
All that work for nothing?
Yeah, that's right. Well, we didn't have an agreement. It was only oral. And she then got someone else years later to write a book called Veronica, and it was, shall we say, a vanilla copy, and it didn't go over, it didn't sell. So the story got buried. So I long ago learned that autobiographies are not what they should be, and then I tried it again. Never give up, and I met.
No, wait, before you go off. So you own that. Why don't you produce it?
Well, maybe I did. That's a story for another. But you have to wait till the people die.
Oh, okay.
And then I met Greta Keller, who was the most famous chanteuse of Europe, particularly during the Nazi Berlin era. And in fact, she was the woman who recorded the hit record of World War II, Lily Marlene. You may have, I think you probably saw Cabaret.
Oh, yes. Is that part of that?
Well, Greta Keller's voice opens when the titles are coming on for Cabaret. You hear Greta's voice, and she was Adolf Hitler's most favorite singer, and Eva Braun was very jealous of Greta. Well, I met her when she was in her late 70s, and she asked me to do her memoir. Well, a fantastic story. I'll just give you one incident. Here she was hanging out with Hermann Goering and all of these Joseph Goebbels and Adolf Hitler, and then she got a call one night from Conrad Veidt. Now, Conrad Veidt was a very famous German actor. You saw him in one of his final movies was Casablanca with Ingrid Bergman and Humphrey Bogart.
Right.
And he called her and said, Greta, take the next plane out of Berlin. Don't go home. Don't pick up your furs. Leave your jewelry. Get on the next plane, or you will be killed. And she took Conrad Veidt's advice and rushed to the airport. And the next plane heading west was to Amsterdam. And she flew to Amsterdam, and she found out why she was on the death list. She was a Jewish woman, and she had concealed that, and Goebbels found out, and having Hitler and this Nazi hierarchy hanging out with a Jewish woman. Well, of course, in 1938, that could be a problem in Nazi Berlin. And then she went to England, got a boat to from Southampton to New York, and on the way over on the boat had an affair with Ernest Hemingway.
He just happened to be on the boat, right?
Who just happened to be on the boat. Arrived in Manhattan and got booked at the famous Algonquin Hotel, and where she then launched an affair with Greta Garbo. Well, I said, this is great stuff, Greta. She came to live with me, by the way.
But wait a minute. And by the way, that's one of the first places you took Bill and me.
Yes.
To the Algonquin. Right. I was so thrilled that you had, boy, that was your hangout. I know that for a while.
And then she...
so she lived with you.
This, and then she started saying, oh, no, we can't put that in. She said, it will make me look like a Nazi. And I said, well, you were a star in Nazi Berlin. You were not a Nazi. I mean, you had Jewish parents, and who later were executed. I mean, they later were rounded up and put in a concentration camp. That doesn't make you a Nazi. Oh no, I can't tell that. So she went on with this fabulous story, and she said, "Oh no." So I was experiencing another Veronica Lake. Oh, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. And she was gutting the story, and it was a remarkable story of a beautiful, blonde Jewish lady who, Marlene Dietrich more or less stole Greta's persona in film. And even sometimes you can't tell the difference between Greta's voice and Marlene's voice when they're singing. And she just said, no, I can't publish this. I just can't do it. So But unlike Veronica, I got what I did. Greta was quite elderly in the last days, and then after she died, I transformed it into a novel called Marika, which did very well. It was Book of the Month in the Netherlands and sold very well, much more in Germany than in America. So I just simply ran the same story.
This is fascinating. Does anybody have you told this story to anybody? This is a fascinating thing to hear.
Well, actually, I haven't, because first I didn't think it put me in a very good light, to be working on biographies that I couldn't publish, and then I said, I did one more of a famous actor. And
wait. Before you do that, I have to tell people who you are. I mean, I know you go and you talk, and I know you, and a lot of our listeners do, but I want to go over and do it again. Darwin Porter, who is a famous author. In fact, I just received this amazing book, of course, with Peter O'Toole, which I'll talk about another time. But the thing is that he writes every month, just one of the most, I call it a titillating article for us, but he has written so many books. I mean, Jackie O, the books that are just amazing. And so he's on our radio show. He calls in at 5 a.m. once a month to do this. And so I just want everyone to know how lucky we are to hear you.
Yeah, well, just from what I told you, I thought those were amazing stories.
They are. They're very amazing.
And should have been written. And once these people are alive, they want to do it. Now, I don't want to leave the impression that I have only written about people who have passed on. I mean, I wrote a book on Michael Jackson when he was still alive, and I also published a book on the Gabor sisters and the surviving member who, amazingly, in her very weakened condition, goes on Zsa Zsa Gabor. And I wrote a book about Ronald Reagan and Nancy Davis, and Miss Davis, now Mrs. Reagan, is still alive. And I'm also closing out a book now about two people who are very, very much alive, by the names of Bill Clinton and Hillary.
All right,
Rodham.
That's going to be some book. And when do you think that'll come out?
They are still alive,
right?
And but normally I think that in general I agree with the New York Times. You really people want to censor their own stories, and I understand that. If I would never be interested in writing an autobiography of my own life. First, I wouldn't be able to believe what I wrote because, as you know, I spent 50 years roaming the world for the Frommer guys. I traveled everywhere. And what I did or what I saw is almost unbelievable when you get out there and you see what's going on in the world. It's beyond shocking. I mean, we get glimpses of it every now and then on television, but the world is a pretty shocking place,
well,
as I discovered.
Darwin, I have to say that you have brought more shocking news and information to us than anybody I've ever had on the radio show, and I just absolutely love our friendship. I love what you do for us. I will be putting Peter O'Toole on the cover of our July issue, and I have to thank you so much for, in fact, the article you just sent on Shakespeare for our June issue is glorious. And so thank you, Darwin. You're my very, very special friend and special guest, and I hope it gets warmer so you don't get cold bones.
Here, the Boomer Times, which with the Bard, is going literary here.
Right? Well, thank you.
Shakespeare himself was a shocking person.
Okay, well, we'll talk about him another time. Thank you so much, Darwin. I loved having you on our show this morning.
Sounds like a great show.
Yeah.
Got coming up.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.